How does this help us understand the causes of the American Revolution? Well, what it does do is to show that if you just look at ideology and the constitutional reasons for the American Revolution, you can't really explain the American Revolution, and also why Americans themselves split during the Revolution. It may be the leading reason for the American Revolution, but what these other examples show is that the economic and social context is clearly very important. There are 4 different books explaining the American Revolution in Virginia. One of the greatest is by one of your former George Rogers Clark speaker, Ed Morgan at Yale, and he used slavery to explain Virginia's rebellion. Essentially, that the planters were terrified of slave rebellion, and they also, because there were so many slaves, 1/3 of the population in Virginia, it sensitized them to their own liberties and to their own rights, that this was a reason for them to rebel. Now, the only problem with that is that slavery is also given as a reason why the British West Indies stayed loyal, because they wanted the British Army as a police force. Now, it can work as a reason in both places, but we'd certainly have to modify it. We'd have to modify that argument to say that the percentage of slaves in a particular place is key. Tim Breen, T.H. Breen, is another of your former George Rogers Clark speaker. He did a great book called Tobacco Culture that explained the revolution in Virginia as a result of the credit crisis in Virginia in 1772, which is good. The problem is that there was also a credit crisis, a much worse one, down in the British West Indies, and they remain loyal. So what these examples do is to highlight the problem of explaining the American Revolution in terms of one cause. It reminds us to think that there are always multiple causes, that context is all important. This is how you explain why some Americans stay loyal, why some Americans think that there is not a conspiracy to overthrow their rights, that there is not tyranny. Because some, for example, benefited economically from the British tie. There's no doubt that the elite merchants who had special arrangements with Britain, or leading figures in the Anglican Church, tended to be loyalist. And so the decisions and choices cannot be solely explained in terms of ideology and constitutional beliefs. We also need to look at the material self-interest and other considerations, and looking at these other places in the empire helps to emphasize that fact. Thank you. I hope that wasn't too technical.